continue to let people in. Hi, Miles from Creative Mentor Network. Ah, yes, I know Kate knows Creative Mentor Network well. Awesome. All right, perfect. So I'm going to kick us off with a little bit of what we're going to cover today and some introductions, and then I'm going to hand over to Kate for the majority of the session. If you could just pop to the next slide for me, Kate. Cool. So would love to get some feedback from you before we kick off in the chat. So in response to this question, you can just literally just put a number, the number 1, 2, 3, or 4, or obviously feel free to add more comments. But we'd love to know when we think about social media for you or your organization, what would you say is your biggest pain point?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. So
Just trying to
number
open the
one
chat.
is number one is a lack of time or the capacity to post regularly. Number 2, coming up with ideas for content. Number 3, a lack of engagement or people don't like or follow or comment on your post, or 4, keeping up with the trends and technology. So pop in the chat. I'm going to put in for me, it's number 1. But put in the chat which of these things kind of resonate with you the most when you think about a pain point with social media. You can see a few people saying hi in the chat, which is great. Hi, Candice. Miles, number 1 as well, that lack of time and capacity to post regularly. Number 3, the lack of engagement. I know that Kate's going to cover that as well in today's session, which is awesome. Hi, Jack. That's amazing. Thanks for joining us. Definitely number 1 and a bit of number 2. Yeah, that's super relatable, Jack. I definitely hear you on that one. Awesome. Thanks everyone for sharing. If we just pop to the next slide, Kate, I'll just give you a quick overview of what we're going to cover in today's session. So Kate and I will quickly introduce ourselves, and then Kate's going to take you through social media strategy, telling your story, how to grow your audience and increase engagement. And then it's an overview of the different platforms. So if you feel a bit like you're not sure what platform to go on, it all feels a bit overwhelming, Kate's going to really break things down for us. At the end, I'm going to briefly talk about my platform, Pravi, and how we're building tools to help charities of all sizes grow online and grow on social media. Now, all through the session, please feel free to put questions in the chat and we'll make sure we have time at the end for those as well. I will send out the recording of this session as well as the slides tomorrow. So don't worry, you can access all of this whenever you like. So if we go over to the next slide, Kate, thank you. No, that's all right. Um, a quick introduction. So the QR code that you can see on screen, you can scan this with your mobile phone camera, and it will bring up my details, including how to connect with me on LinkedIn, email me. But I'm the co-founder of Pravi. I used to work in the nonprofit sector, and I then became obsessed with how we could make AI, data insights, and technology available for charities of any size, in particular, charities that are small or medium sized. And so I'm building Pravi as a platform to help charities grow online and reach more individual donors. We're very early stage, but I'm going to share more about the platform and what we have coming up at the end of this session. And would love to connect with you all on LinkedIn if we're not connected already. I'll hand over to you now, Kate.
Hi everyone. So I'm Kate Hamer. Firstly, loving the fact that my brand colours match so well with Pravi's brand colours, so it was like meant to be in terms of doing this webinar. So I am a marketer. I've worked in digital for as long as you can work in digital, really. So I was working on the launch of camera phones back in the early 2000s and business case in why people would want to take a photo with a mobile phone. And now I've got 20,000 photos of where I've parked and various other things on my phone. So we obviously cracked that one. I worked at Disney, at L'Oreal, Unilever, and then for the last 10 years, I've been consulting independently. So I work with a whole range of different clients, from individuals who are in the public eye, so footballers, comedians, authors, through to big corporates on their like LinkedIn strategy. So I don't just do social media, I do search and CRM and everything as well. But social is one area that I particularly enjoy. And could bang on about it for ages, but I'm definitely quite relaxed in terms of presenting. So even if you want to just like take your microphone on and shout a question as I'm talking through stuff, feel free. This is a session for you guys to get the most value from it. So just shout as we go along. So first of all, just talking about in terms of obviously there's lots of different social media platforms, how you should be choosing where to direct your attention. So be thinking about who uses that channel. It could be in terms of age and demographic that way. It could be more in terms of, you know, if you're going out for funders and wanting to work with corporates, you'd be better to look at LinkedIn potentially than looking at TikTok, for example. So think about who's using the channel, what purpose it would have for you. So I think, you know, there are times when you can definitely put the same content across multiple channels, but there are also times where you might want to talk in one way. So again, for example, if it was LinkedIn and you're wanting companies to use their volunteer days with your charity, you might just be posting that on LinkedIn and having other posts that could be around. Robin and I were just chatting. I was saying, you know, if you've got a certain number of places in a sporting event that you were trying to get signed up for, you might have TikTok as entirely a sort of fitness channel where you talk about who's competing in that and how their training's going, and you could get them to be creating the content for you almost in that way. Why is this not working? There we go. Do you understand the channel? So I think this is another thing, and I see this especially when I'm working with like individuals, that they feel like they should be across all of the channels just because they all exist. But actually, whoever's having to manage that, and especially if you're in a small charity and you're doing like a million things in a day and social media isn't your only area, if it's sort of frictiony for you and you don't really know how to use the channel and it's not natural in that you'd be using it for your own personal use, then I'd steer clear of it because you're not going to get the best from it anyway. And you've probably got a million other things to get your head around before learning a new social media platform. Be thinking about what sort of content works best there. So things like obviously video and carousels work especially well on Instagram. That doesn't mean that you can't actually make quite a simple video from some animated text coming up or from 3 photos that you've got. You don't have to always be filming, but certainly reel format and carousel format works much better in terms of getting engagement and reach. And then be thinking about, is it sustainable? So if you think about, for example, a series of content that you think, oh, that would be perfect on this particular platform, but you've only actually got 5 episodes of it, and after that you're going to be like, oh God, now what do we post on TikTok? We've not got anything left to do. Then again, it's probably not worth getting involved with. And then are there any political considerations, especially obviously with X these days? Quite a few people have come off that platform. I mean, it is a super tricky thing in terms of all of the tech billionaires, really. We know that obviously our presence on those platforms is generating revenue that is going back to them. I am kind of the opinion that I feel like, one, no matter how principled I might be, if I leave, I know a lot of my target audience is not going to be as bothered. And so actually, I'm going to end up being in a little echo chamber somewhere and not with the people that I need to communicate with. But there are also ways that you can do things in the back end of the platforms where you can go in and like turn off tracking and stuff. So actually they won't have the best data about you to be able to sell more ads and stuff. So I've done that on mine at least to like dampen down how much data they're getting about me, but I am still on there because obviously I work with a lot of people on there as well. So if we look at the different platforms available, obviously you've got the sort of 3 main: Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok from a point of view of, you know, photos, videos, real mass market, being able to interact with lots of different people on there. I would then put X and Threads as the more sort of text-based ones. Obviously, Threads you can create straight off the back of your Instagram, and I think they are working to do more to sort of cross-pollinate the audiences on there. You might see that sometimes if you're on Instagram, you'll get an alert in your notifications saying someone's posted a thread about whatever. So if you are in a position where you talk a lot about different topics or, you know, newsworthy items and that kind of thing, then those sort of text-based platforms can be quite good. It's much more real-time updates on them. Obviously, LinkedIn from a more sort of commercial perspective, opportunities to get, you know, donors, work with volunteers, etc. YouTube can be kind of like a channel in terms of a repository for stuff. But again, if you were a health charity, so for example, I've got some screenshots of the Alzheimer's Society one a bit later on, but where they've got videos that are about, improving your memory or doing things for your health and stuff. YouTube is a huge search engine effectively. So people go on there to find like how to do things and stuff. So, Miles, from your point of view, there could be things that are about how to create a great job application or things like that that could work and get you exposure that way. Again, I've got some notes on YouTube as we go through with a few tips. And then obviously Substack is starting to be used quite a bit more by people, particularly journalists and stuff. But again, if your charity is doing things like research in particular areas or has updates that way, that could be a good platform. You can have people subscribe to it. You can also have different paid elements to it. So it could even be a way for you to generate some funds if it was that people could subscribe to, I don't know, if you've got like a celebrity ambassador, maybe they write a blog that is only available to the subscribers or things like that. I will just say with all of this as well, there's probably a whole session on every single platform, but I think afterwards, obviously give Robin any feedback in terms of what you found useful or what you might want to know more of, and we could look at how we could create some other sessions. So in terms of your strategy, you obviously want to be thinking, what are you trying to achieve? Who it is that you're targeting audience wise, where you can best reach them out of those different channels, and how are you going to know if you'd be successful as well? So that would be another thing that I would always say, make sure in advance you've decided what it is that you want to measure. I think all of these platforms have now got really good sort of integrated analytics into them, so you can see, what reach your posts are getting, who they're reaching, how people are interacting, etc. But it's always good to say up front, if you are doing a campaign over a couple of months or something like that, how are we going to know if this is successful? Is it that we want to just get in front of X number of people? Is it that we want, I saw obviously someone had said a question about getting people to convert to something. So is it that you want X number of sign-ups? Is it that you want X amount donated? And at least having that in advance so that you know how you're doing against it and you can sort of adapt as you go along. So telling your story is obviously super important on these platforms. So be thinking about what it is you do, why there's a need for that, what results you've had. So that's obviously good news stories that you can be sharing, and people like those kind of positive things on the platforms. How can people help? And that can be about sort of donating, but it could also be giving you feedback on stuff. It could be just sharing one of your posts. There's plenty of ways that you can get people to be supporting. Doing spotlights on your supporters also brings more to your story. Obviously, it sort of shows the type of people that are getting involved with the charity. That might enable someone to sort of see themselves in that person and get involved that way. And also, obviously, behind the scenes stuff might seem really sort of every day to you guys that are working in the charity all the time, but I think there's some really interesting stories that can be told, whether it's about the people that are in the team and how they got to be working with you and why they're so passionate about it, or it could be a day in the life of doing grant applications and what you have to think. There's lots of different things that way that would be interesting content that you've just got sort of at your fingertips. And I think that's a way, when everybody's obviously super tight on time, but those kind of things, if you wanted to be doing spotlights on people within the team, you could do it so that you just sort of block a morning out. Everybody takes 3 different tops, so you can just swap tops and do videos about different things. Sometimes it could be as simple as, I don't know, if you're a children's charity, for example, you might ask everybody in the office, like, what was their favorite thing to do playing when they were a kid or something. And that could be a nice little montage video that you could do at some point. And you can kind of cut and slice this content in different ways as well then. So banking content to be able to use it over a period of time is quite a good way to take the pressure off every week thinking, oh God, we've got to come up with 7 posts or whatever this week. In terms of finding your voice, be thinking what it is you want to be known for. Why should people follow you? What can they expect? You know, you want them to, if people are coming across one of your posts just randomly in their feed because of the algorithm, like, can they get from that straight away who you are and what you stand for to be able to then be thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to follow these guys. So what's recognizable? You know, do you have a particular style of subtitles always? Do you have a frame around your pictures? What is it that's going to make people be like, oh yeah, that is a post from XYZ? And also, it's quite important who you hang around with. So, you know, in the early days of influencers, you saw that they were all kind of friends and together. And so they'd like cross promote each other and that kind of thing. So, again, are there either other charities or people that are expert in your area that you can sort of interact with regularly and be writing comments on their posts and that kind of thing? So you become part of a bit of a community within the community. So getting your bio right is really important. Obviously, we put in the most important things first in it. So this is mine on the right-hand side on Instagram, but I will sort of dial up and down these different things depending on what I'm doing at a certain time. So, you know, when I was doing my philosophy MA, I'd have probably had like philosophy student at the top because I was interacting with more like philosophy content and that kind of stuff. So you want to be putting whatever the things that matter are first. Tag relevant accounts. So you can see here I've tagged because I've got another business access stars. So I've tagged that. You know, if you were if you've got like an ambassador that you do a lot of work with, or if your founder is someone that's got their own account and their own following as well, like tag them in the bio so that it's easy for people to click out. Obviously be linking to a website or a link tree or a Stan store or those kind of platforms that help you be able to have multiple links on your bio. Tailor it to the platform as well. So, you know, there'll be different things that you might be putting in your bio on LinkedIn compared to what you put on TikTok, etc. There's also things like on Instagram, for example, you can have a support button, which can go straight through to, you know, donate and fundraise and that kind of thing. There are options similarly on TikTok where you can have a sort of fundraising link. So make the most of all of those kind of things. And then you can obviously use other elements of your account to tell a story as well. So you can see I've got my highlights here, but I have highlights like clients work with me, etc. So you might have highlights about recent projects or current funding opportunities or those kind of things. So again, if someone's looking at your profile to decide whether to interact with you, whether to follow you, they can see more about you from the profile straight away. And review it regularly. So that is one thing I think a lot of people set up their bio and then they completely forget about it and they never go back to it again. And actually, it's something that you can update regularly and have it really timely for whatever it is you're working on. So growing your audience. So you obviously want to get on people's radar, that you need people to know that you're on the platform. So ways that you can do that. I would always say, particularly when you're an organization like a charity and stuff, you want to be following like a third of the number of people that are following you, because when people look at it, you want them to see daylight between your followers and what you're following, and that makes them think like you're a sort of legitimate account, you're the official one, you've got your followers, etc. So where it used to be the case that people would like follow people to get them to follow back and then maybe unfollow and it gets all complicated, I just do it much more around the likes. So I'd be finding accounts. So it might be that you look at like specialists in your area, you look at who's following them, you then go into those accounts, and if there are relevant posts, you can like their posts. They'll then be like, oh, who's this account, and look across, and that's a way to sort of get on their radar. Equally, you know, commenting on conversations and getting involved that way means that when people are then scrolling through the comments of stuff, they'll see that you've posted and get involved. Following key people in your sector, and like I say, looking at who's following them is a good way into it. Hashtags are also quite a good way to sort of search topics. Hashtags are being less used now on the platform in terms of the sort of like getting reach and things for them, but they're very much good for like curation and to give an idea of what a post is about. So it's worth looking at certain hashtags to find content that's relevant for you. Collaborations are obviously really good as well, particularly on Instagram, and that you can do stuff on TikTok as well. So, you know, if you have got fundraisers that are training for the marathon or doing something like that, obviously, if they're posting and tagging you as a collaborator, it means you're getting new content going out and you're not having to create it. You get in front of their followers. Definitely any ambassadors and stuff that you've got, like try to be getting some collaboration posts with them. You know, influencers that might just be supporting you on certain topics and things, you might be able to do some stuff that way. Beneficiaries of your work as well. So, you know, if you are working with, I don't know, like particular venues, or if you're giving money to, I don't know, if it was like food banks or something and they were doing a post, then they could obviously collaborate with you as well. And then the other thing is just to be thinking about using your other channels as well. You know, if you've got an email newsletter and a database there, then you can be featuring your social channels in the email to say, you know, did you know we're on Instagram? Give us a follow, etc. That way. And having prominent links on your website as well obviously makes sense. And when you're sending any sort of brief, if you've got like people doing fundraising, then encourage them and give them all the handles and tell them if you use particular hashtags and that sort of stuff. Is everybody okay so far? Do shout if you've got any questions. I realize I'm flying through it. Right, increasing engagement. So obviously thinking about what to post can sometimes be tricky. So what I do in terms of the way that I content plan is I have a calendar and I basically work from the biggest like macro down to the detail of whoever I'm working with. So be thinking about world events, you know, is it like Independence Day is obviously coming up in July. Is there anything around that for your charity? When things like sporting and cultural events are on, so it's obviously Wimbledon at the moment, it's the Women's Euros, you've got the Women's Rugby World Cup. There could be things that could be relevant around that. Any sort of industry sector events, depending on what your charity is and what you do, there could be some things that way that would make sense to be posting around. And then your specific sort of messaging and events and things that you would want to talk about. You always want to have a purpose for the post. I think, you know, the algorithms are going to sort of punish you if you do a bad post, which I'll come on to. But you need to be thinking with anything that you're posting, like what does it say about you as a charity? Is it adding to your overall story? Is it going to age well? So, you know, that I've got a whole folder full of like poorly thought out social posts that people have done. So I love it actually when something goes wrong on social media. I'm like screenshotting it all, thinking this will be good for a training session. But I remember there was a thing years ago with Benefit makeup, and there was a trend going around on Twitter that was about make a movie a fatty, and it was like changing the title of a film to make it sound fat. But they did all of these ones trying to jump on the trend, but they got absolutely hammered for it because everyone was saying you're meant to be about like women empowerment and body positivity and all of this, and then you've done that stuff. So yeah, all those kind of things are a risk. So in terms of the algorithm, I think there's sometimes sort of conspiracy theory around the algorithm where people think like, you know, Mark Zuckerberg is sitting at home not wanting a particular person's post to be able to show and stuff. But the bottom line is they want to be able to sell more advertising. That's their entire revenue model. And so to do that, they need usage and they need dwell time. And the best way for them to get usage and dwell time is to show people the stuff that they're most likely to interact with. Now, unfortunately, quite a lot of that does then become the sort of sensationalist post because people are like, oh, I can't believe this, and they share it. And the algorithm doesn't know when people are commenting or sharing a post because they're outraged and disgusted by it versus they love it and they're inspired by it. So one little tip I would say actually that, so for example, the White House account on Instagram just horrifies me these days with the stuff that it posts, like Donald Trump dressed as the Pope and stuff. but I would never share their post to a story. I screenshot it so they don't benefit at all. And then I post the screenshot in a story saying like, oh my God, what's going on with the White House account? So that's a way to like minimize traffic and reach of the stuff, but still be able to comment on it. So you doing a bad post, and a bad post, I mean, in terms of like a post that people aren't really interested in, they just scroll past it, doesn't sort of stop them in their tracks, means that the next post you do, even if that is a super interesting one, is going to be pushed out to fewer people because the algorithm's going to think, oh, that didn't do so well, so I'm not going to do it. So I think things, for example, like if you were doing a fundraising gala, for example, and loads of people had posted stories through the evening about how great it was and stuff, I wouldn't then put those straight into a grid post that you'd put out at like 1 in the morning because you're still doing it, because it won't get as much reach and it won't do as well as if you wait until the next day. So it's sort of thinking, how can you like hold content to perform at the best time? I think you're a really good like yardstick for it yourself. So if you're looking at something that's going out on the channel and you think I wouldn't share it or like it, then just don't post it. I think sometimes people panic that they've maybe not posted for a few days and so they think they should. And you'll see those like random, you know, happy Friday or things that just add no value, and actually it does you worse in the long term. So you'd be better to only post, you know, 2 or 3 times in a week, for example, on Instagram or Facebook, and then be really great posts rather than feeling you've got to post every day and you're sort of scraping the barrel to create all the content that you need. And then make content fit for purpose as well. So be thinking about like the formats of the different platforms. You know, sometimes even if it's an image, you're better to resize that image for the different platforms that you're going to go across rather than just sort of blanket posting it that way. Think about the duration of stuff as well. You know, quite often now you'll see that people are doing videos within their stories, that the entire thing can be watched within a story, or a reel can be shared to a story, but it's the length of the story so people aren't having to click and move on from it. You know, dimensions, as I've mentioned, so think about those for each platform. So being part of the community is really important. Like, these platforms are not a place to broadcast, really. I love the analogy that people often use about social media being like a dinner party. And you wouldn't turn up to a dinner party where you didn't know anyone and just start going, I've done this and I went here and I like this and I'm this, and because people would be like, who is this person that's turned up? But you know, at a dinner party, you join, you listen, you sort of gauge who's there, what people are talking about, and then when you've got something to contribute to whatever that conversation is, you will. So I think thinking of it in that way, and being generous on there, you know, liking and sharing other people's content, interacting with that, like that's going to encourage more people to be interacting with you. The other thing in terms of the algorithm as well is that obviously the more an account is interacting with you, the more they're going to see of your content. So again, if you're interacting with them, they're going to be more likely to interact back with you, etc. And contribute. So, you know, if you're on LinkedIn, maybe share someone's article. If you're in Facebook groups, maybe give some advice for something that is relevant. Be giving shout outs in Instagram stories, that kind of thing. Replying to people's stories by a direct message as well. You know, if you have got people that are talking about your charity, if it's something, you know, I completely understand that sometimes you might have a certain way of talking about what it is your charity is doing, and maybe someone's done a post and they've slightly got it wrong, but they're saying, oh, they do great stuff in this field, but you feel like you can't share it. You can still reply to them and say, you know, thanks so much, it's so great that you're supporting us, and that matters to people, so it'll help build more relationships. And encourage user generated content as well. You know, any sort of incentives that you can be giving to people to show you what they're doing. It does then mean that you're getting content that you can use as well, because you can share it, and it means you're not having to create everything from scratch. So definitely putting out things. I saw, for example, Surfers Against Sewage recently did a t-shirt design competition, and so they're asking people to design, I think it was like a 35th anniversary of the charity t-shirt, and they got people to design them, and then they were getting people to vote and stuff. So those kind of things are great for community engagement. So what makes a post shareable? So what we've always got to remember is that anybody's social media account is about them. Like they are curating their own social media account and they're wanting to show a particular view of themselves. And the key things are really they either want to be showing that they've got like knowledge or they're the first to discover something or usefulness like tricks and tips, and also that kind of emotional stuff. But what people are most likely to share is, you know, oh, this is so me, or I just shared, for example, on Instagram a video that a comedian's done, which is about what she'd be like on Love Island. And she's got like a swimming cap and her earplugs in. And she's like, sorry, no, I'm trying to do laps. Can you get the inflatable out of the thing? And, you know, it's funny, but I'm like, this would so be me on that sort of thing. So that's why I've shared it. I think it's interesting as well that there are sort of differences between what women are sharing and what men are sharing. So a lot of what women are sharing is like useful content. Men tend to do more like funny things, but both of them are wanting to obviously make themselves look good, make themselves look funny, intelligent, etc. So that does provide a bit of a challenge for charities quite often, because obviously charities are working in all kinds of fields that are not necessarily pleasant to talk about. You know, if you're a charity that is solving hunger or malaria and things like that, like some of the images that you've got and stuff are not things that people are going to want to share, but equally you need to sort of put the images out to get to people's heartstrings and make them understand what needs to be done. So it's trying to have a bit of a mix of things that you could post so that people have got stuff that can be shared. You know, you've got the sort of perceptions of the different things that you might be working on. You've got potential politics with some of the charities in terms of, you know, going up against like government policy, which is making the problems in the first place and stuff. So it's not the easiest of places. But I think you do have opportunities, you know, to be like using the news and doing more timely posts and tapping into those kind of things to get your messages across. Oh, sorry. I've got some more examples of charity stuff I'll come on to as well. Just a quick thought on hashtags. So as I say, they're sort of evolving now and it's much more about like curation. So still worth you having specific hashtags if you've got certain campaigns, because it means someone could click that and see everything that's to do with that campaign in one place. The shorter and sweeter for them, the better. Always check how it reads. Sometimes if people are writing them all in lowercase letters, it can end up, you can cut it at different places and it ends up saying something completely different to what you wanted it to say. Obviously punctuation doesn't work. Screen readers for people with visual impairment can cope with them a lot better if there's a leading capital letter at the start of each word. Unfortunately, the platforms, when you start to type in, even if you are doing, you know, I don't know, like animal welfare, and you were putting a capital A and a capital W, it would then suggest one to save you writing it, but it suggests it in lowercase, which is a bit frustrating. So I always ignore them and do them with leading caps because it just makes it much easier for visually impaired people to navigate the platform. I would avoid putting you or I in any hashtags. I had one when I worked at Maybelline that came down from the US sort of central office, which was I go extreme. And it was really difficult to use in marketing because it's like I go extreme. Do you hashtag I go extreme? Like it didn't really work. And the other one that always used to annoy me was when Barclays sponsored the Premier League and they used to have you are football. But then I was like, well, should I say I am football or am I saying you are football when I use it? So yeah, I'd avoid them. And in terms of how many, I mean, Instagram, for example, said they were reducing down from their 30 to it being sort of 12, but I'm still seeing some people post loads and getting good results from it. So I think you just want to make sure that they're relevant. So like, don't be cynical and be putting hashtags that are not really anything to do with the content that you're using, particularly as the platforms are getting much smarter at understanding the language in the captions and stuff anyway, to be able to serve up like relevant content to users. So like I say, you don't necessarily need them for that kind of algorithmic discovery, but for people clicking on them, it's still worth doing. So quick whistle stop on the different platforms. How are we doing for time? Not great. Has anybody
It's
got
all good, Kate. Don't worry. It's everyone's listening intently. It's we've got plenty of time.
has anyone got a preference of a platform that they particularly want to know about? Stick that in the chat, but for now I'll keep going. So Instagram, you've obviously got a whole range of different things that you can do on there. So you've got reels, your carousels, your static posts, then you've got stories. There's such a wealth now of stickers within stories to enable you to do things like polls, quizzes, rating scales. All of those things are great because whenever anybody interacts with that, that's telling the algorithm that they're interested. And that means when they next come to their stories, your circle is going to be like further along their thing. Another thing that you might consider with stories, depending on who you know on Instagram, is that so with my other business, Access Stars, we have a membership. And so what we've done is we've created our close friends list as our members. So it means that we can post stories just to them. So again, if you were doing an event and you knew the guest list for it, for example, you could have all of them as close friends. So then they'd see posts that everybody else wouldn't see. I mentioned highlights before, so obviously on this Choose Love example, they've got some different highlights that they've used. The Support Us button, broadcast channels are another way that you can have a bit more of a sort of closer relationship with your followers. So you can encourage them to subscribe to a broadcast channel. You can then do posts in there, polls, conversations, chats. They can reply to stuff. You can share your content in there as well to get more exposure. Live broadcasts, you can do those with other people as well. So again, if there was, I don't know, someone on the ground that was spending the money that you'd raised, for example, you could do a live with them showing what they were doing wherever it was, and someone back in head office interviewing them. There's obviously shopping options within Instagram as well. So if you've got merch that you sell and things, you could do posts where you can link straight out for people to be able to buy. Two new developments that are starting to roll out that are good. One is that they have finally introduced shared access. So you have to be a Meta verified customer, but you can then have 3 users logged into the same account without having to share the password. So they can be in through their own account. So I've seen screenshots of it. It's not on any of the accounts I manage yet, so I don't think it's fully rolled out, but it's coming. And the other thing is grid edits. So they're going to let you rearrange your grid. So then you won't have to be doing posts in a certain order because you want them to be in a certain order on the grid. You'll be able to drag and drop things around. They'd also talked about moving highlights into this grid area. So it'd be an option at the top. But again, I've not seen anything since they announced that. From Facebook, I have to be honest, I put this in at the last minute when everyone was coming in because I was like, oh, I never did a Facebook slide. But the key things on there, obviously you've got the main posts, which you can do in various different formats. You can have photo albums. You've got your stories the same. I think groups are quite an interesting place within Facebook. And again, it could be people that are working in your sector that you want to be interacting with. It could be potential funders, etc. And then setting up events on there is obviously a good place to get people to be like having reminders and that kind of thing. From a TikTok point of view, obviously you can do videos, you can do photos the same now. People are starting to do like carousels and things on there, so you don't have to be thinking that you've got to create video all the time. Got a similar sort of stories option. Lives are super popular on there. You've got your kind of pinned posts along the top that you also can do obviously on the other 2 platforms. So you can put your most important things there if people are just discovering your account. You can see there's these series as well, like the Climate Witness, Christmas Gift Guide. So you can link videos. So if there's one video about something, then you link the next one to it. That's a way to make sure people are going down your rabbit hole rather than just the TikTok rabbit hole. There's also opportunities to have like a lead generation form on there. Obviously, you can have your sort of supporting link where people can click and you can fundraise. So making sure you're sort of maxing out your bio and getting everything that you can in there. Definitely any like action buttons to email you, etc. I would be adding. And then there's TikTok shop as well, of course, if you've got merch. And then from a LinkedIn point of view, obviously you've got post, photo, video. Polls are quite a good way to drive engagement on LinkedIn. Documents as well you can post, so you can do those as like a PDF. So if you've got your impact report or something, rather than making people click off, you can actually give it to them straight in the post. Use your team. So a post from a person gets about 7 times the reach that a post from a page would get. So, tagging the team in posts that you do and encouraging them to share them is a way to get in front of more people. Also, whoever is working in your team is probably more likely to be connected to people within the sector. So it sort of helps you grow that way. Within your company page, this example on the right is a really good one. I'd have a look at Cancer Research UK. So they're using the life option within their page, which enables you to create different pages around different topics, and you can actually target them at certain people as well. So you could have a sort of donors page that you target at particular sectors and at particular job roles, etc. And what happens is the different things, so you've got like philanthropy, policy, information, communications. As those change, the company spotlights beneath change. So you can put different images in, you can put different headlines, text, you can have employee testimonials. So it's a good way to sort of build a bit of a prospectus of stuff on there. And especially like if you've got quite a basic website, this could be a place that you could build some more stuff in without having to pay anybody to do any development for you or anything. Messages, obviously, as well, always key to be using message opportunities. And then groups again in LinkedIn are a good place, and having, maybe creating some of your own groups if you have got events that people are participating in or campaigns that people could get behind. Obviously, be encouraging any like volunteers to connect themselves to your organization as well, so that then your logo is showing on all of their profile pages too. And then YouTube, I mentioned early, sort of using it for a bit of a repository. You can have playlists where you can be pulling in other people's videos as well, so you don't have to create all of the videos. And the main thing I'd say here is just think about what people might be searching and consider that when you're creating your descriptions and titles for videos, because that's going to help with search results. So a few great examples. Give Blood, NHS. I absolutely love the fact that whenever I post a story saying that I'm giving blood, I always get a reply for them saying thanks for the donation. I'm sure it's a saved reply. It probably takes them 2 seconds, but it feels like I've been acknowledged and stuff. So that's great. Choose Love, I think, do some good stuff in that these kind of, text-based posts reflect what people think, and so they can easily share that to their story because they validate that, and it's not saying the horrible stuff about people are dying in Sudan and all of that, but it's getting exposure for the charity and giving people stuff to share. Using sort of news articles to like back up what you're talking about. So this is an example from Surfers Against Sewage where they're sort of showing headlines, and again you can see people are sharing that. And then also, stats. So where we talked about people wanting to know things and show that they're knowledgeable, sharing stats like this is quite a good way of sort of validating what it is that you're doing within your charity. So final whistle stop top tips. Know who you are, be consistent. Just because it exists doesn't mean you have to do it. Listen before you start speaking. Only speak when you have something to say. Don't post anything you aren't happy to see on the front page of a newspaper, because we know that it's used as quite a source as well for stuff. So, even if something went up and quickly came down, it's probably going to have been screenshot by someone. So just be careful. There you go. Sorry.
No, thanks, Kate. That was awesome. In fact, there was so much information into a short time. I'm just going to literally take 5 minutes now to talk about Pravi and some tools that we're building to help with social media. But while I'm doing that, feel free to put any questions in the chat because there will be time at the end. So if there's anything that from Kate's content that you're wondering about, anything else you want to ask, please put that in the chat now and we'll pick it up in a minute. Can you just go to the next slide for me, Kate? So also I'd love to know in the chat, what
Oh,
if you
sorry,
no,
sorry.
that's okay. You can also let me know in the chat, and we are going to speed through this a little bit, but I'd love to know if you're currently using social media scheduling tools or any other tools that help you with social media when it comes to technology. Again, feel free to just put a number, one, two, three, or four, or if you want to leave a longer comment, that's super interesting and helpful as well. And also like what platform you're using. I'd love to know that too. So if you could go to the next slide for me, Kate. So, as I said, Pravi is a platform I'm building to help charities of any size grow online and reach new donors. We currently have a platform that's live, and we've been running free trials for the last 2 months. And we have the features live on the platform that you can see on screen, which is helping you build donor personas, mapping out a donor journey, creating content, and then scheduling posts and tracking results. But what I really want to talk to you about today is the new features we've got coming, which are about social media. So if we just go to the next slide, Kate. So this is based on feedback we've had from people in our free trial. We're going to launch a feature that helps you build different types of campaigns with different aims across social media. So if, for example, you want to run an emergency appeal, promote a campaign, promote an event, or create brand awareness, Pravi is going to let you build those different campaigns with different types of amounts that you might want to raise, different calls to action that you want people to do, and different lengths of campaign, and help you create content across social media channels with these different aims in mind. You go to the next one, please, Kate. Um, Pravi will also help you upload sources. So you can upload text, a URL, or a PDF, and Pravi will read that and create content for you based on that information. So this is how we create content in your authentic organization voice. So rather than that kind of AI, very generic content, Pravi will read sources that you give it and you have control over, and then create social media posts for you based on that content. And if we go to the next one. And this is basically what the social media creation tool is going to look like. So we're going to include the ability to create AI images if you want to, but it's completely optional. You can add your own images or videos. And then Pravi will help you schedule across different social media platforms. At the moment, because we're very early on in our journey, we let our users connect as many different social media accounts as you want. So Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube, anything you want. Because as I say, at the moment, we're in that kind of early stage and signing up new users. And then so if we just get to the next, I think it's my last one. Yeah. So what I want to say to everyone today is we are offering a free 4-week trial of Pravi, and that includes live webinars with me and one-on-one support. After our free trial, Pravi is £20 a month, and you can cancel anytime. If any of this that I've shared about Pravi sounds interesting to you, I'd love to have a call. I can show you the platform in more detail, or if you have any questions, you can reach out to me on email. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you. And then one other thing to add, I'll just leave that screen up for a second so that everybody's got your email. But I am offering free sort of 30-minute idea sessions basically on a Thursday morning. So on the next slide, if you scan that QR code, you can book a session in there. So if you want to bounce any ideas around either your specific challenges or if you want to think of some ideas for content or whatever, then feel free to book one of those sessions in and be happy to have a chat. Any other questions from anyone?
So I think we like sort of touched on this, but there was a question that was submitted when we did the registration, which was about um, charities getting views on Facebook and they're getting clicks through, but they're not getting the sales or the purchases of like event tickets. Like it's not
Yeah.
converting. Do you have any tips about that, Kate?
Yeah, I mean, so I think partly it's a little bit tricky with the way that Meta give the stats. Like quite often, they're talking about a 3-second view of things and stuff and counting that as a good interaction, which might not be the case. Um, if they're clicking through and then are they, is the person who asked that question on there, are they sort of signing up or RSVPing and then not showing up to events, or are they not even RSVPing?
I think it was then not. So what I'm getting from the question, if the person is on the line, please feel free to chip in. But they're mentioning clicks to events, but no sales. So it sounds
Okay,
like they're
so
actually
it's selling
selling
tickets for it.
tickets to an event. Yeah.
So I suppose I'd go backwards to look at how are you driving people to the event? Like, is it clear when people are clicking maybe that it's a paid thing? Because if it's
Mm,
not, that might be why people aren't converting. Maybe trying to do things like limited time offers, or, get this only for this amount of time, or, ticket deals and those kind of things
mm,
can be a way to try and get a bit more of a sense of urgency about it. I think in general, what I'm seeing for any sort of signing up to events is that people seem a lot more like prepared to bail or to decide at the last minute and stuff than they were, I think, pre-pandemic. It's sort of changed people's approach to committing to anything, I think. So, um, particularly if you're a charity, I think even sort of stressing those things of, we're small, we're trying to fundraise, we really need commitments in advance for this sort of thing,
mm,
maybe tug at the heartstrings that way. I think being clear about what the journey that someone's going to go on once they've clicked, like what are they going to expect to do? Because I think, sometimes people might be on their phone and they'll think, oh, I'll do that later on my computer where I've got my
mm,
bank card saved, or they're on the computer and they'd rather do it with Apple Pay, or those kind of things that make people think I'll do it later and then they don't. So
mm.
looking at tactics to make it super easy for them to do it right now so that you've got them and they just complete the task and they don't have to come back to it. I would
Yeah.
look at that.
Yeah, it's kind of like as you said in your presentation, like putting yourself in the shoes of the person doing that, like the
Yeah,
person who you want to say, like, what is their like end-to-end experience when they,
yeah, yeah,
if you saw your social media post with no context, like what would information would you take from that? Like how would
yeah.
you see that? Um, Awesome. So we've got, so I don't have any more questions in the chat. So I think we can wrap it up there. As I said, I will send out the recording and the slides. Kate, was there anything you wanted to add before we sign off?
No, I don't think so. Just yeah, feel free to connect with me if you've got any questions afterwards or whatever. And yeah.
Awesome. And also feel free to reach out to me as well if you've got other topics that you would like us to cover in these webinars. So social media is something that comes up a lot as being like a pain point for people. And that's why I was so keen to get Kate here. But if there's other webinars you'd like to see, just drop me an email or a LinkedIn message, and I will find an expert to come and talk to you about that. So thanks, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us, and hopefully see you next time. Thanks, Kate.
Thanks. Have great days.
Thank you.